Cassidy is the name of the child possessing Golden Freddy. At least, that's what I think. I already gave my arguments for this in my Happiest Day video, but to quickly reiterate, we've known since FNAF 1 that 5 kids were involved in the missing children's incident at Freddy's. In FNAF 6, we see the gravestones for those 5 kids, with the 5th being hidden. The FNAF Survival Logbook was released the same month as FNAF 6, and features a puzzle based around finding that character's name. The answer to that puzzle is Cassidy. But this video isn't about the Survival Logbook, it's about another FNAF book, the Return to the Pit interactive novel. This book is an adaptation of the Into the Pit story, explored in Fazbear Frights, and the official video game adaptation developed by Mega Cat Studios. Fans are confused with the fact that there have been 2 adaptations of the Fazbear Frights story, making 3 total versions, and thus are really focused on discussing which one is canon. Despite that, I do think that all versions of the story have relevant information to the FNAF story at large. For those who don't know, the premise of Into the Pit is that a kid named Oswald has to hang out alone at a place called Jeff's Pizza. He enters a closed-off ball pit in the restaurant, and when he comes out, he finds himself in 1985 at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which was housed in the building that eventually became Jeff's. While a lot of people initially made fun of the story as being about a time-traveling ball pit, the story, its adaptations, and other stories in the series have cemented this phenomenon as not being time travel, but instead being some sort of manifestation of the missing kids' souls. Some sort of spirit world, essentially. This is why the antagonist of the story is a literal yellow rabbit monster and not William Afton, which means that it can't be literal time travel. This is also why in both the original story and Return to the Pit, tokens magically appear in Oswald's pocket once he desires to play the arcade games. This is some kind of supernatural realm. However, this pit world, as shown in the Into the Pit game and Return to the Pit, does seem to have time-changing properties. Since Return to the Pit is an interactive novel, there are multiple routes that you can take. One of these routes involves Oswald using a gold token to play an arcade game at Freddy's called 8-Bit Escape. When he presses start on the game, it actually transports him into the game. Again, this seems a little ridiculous, but this seems to be just another manifestation of some sort of spirit world, and it's really similar to the Princess Quest 4 sequence from Help Wanted 2, where we play an 8-bit arcade game from a first-person perspective. If you follow the correct route in the book, Oswald will eventually find 5 kids in the game who have been captured and tied up by the Yellow Rabbit. Oswald decides to untie them and lead them out of the pizzeria. However, when Oswald takes them to the main room of the pizzeria, the kids decide to sit at a table and demand cake, while the Yellow Rabbit is slowly approaching them. Oswald agrees to give them cake. As you serve the first piece of cake, you feel ridiculous, but for some reason, now you kind of feel like this is the right choice. It calms you down a bit, even as you sense the rabbit's imminent arrival. You continue to serve cake, 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 and final piece of cake to the girl with curly hair. Fans reading this book were immediately reminded of the Happiest Day minigames from FNAF 3, in which giving kids cake is what allows their souls to be set free. And if you're like me, you think that final kid in Happiest Day at the end of the table is meant to be Cassidy. A lot of people think that this book confirms that. Even though I agree with this, part of this belief actually stems from a slight misconception. Often, some fans end up getting early copies of these books due to stores putting them up on shelves weeks or even months before their official release dates. As a result of this, people who have early copies relay information to the fans who have to wait. For this story, there was a miscommunication with a line from this book. The line, Oswald gives the final piece of cake to the girl with curly hair was misrepresented as Oswald gives the final piece of cake to the girl with black curly hair. Since Cassidy is often portrayed as having black hair, fans assumed that this girl was meant to be Cassidy before they even read the book themselves. But the color of the hair isn't actually stated in the book. Even though the mistake was corrected within the fan base, fans still believe that this final girl in the book is meant to be Cassidy. Therefore, the book would be confirming that Cassidy has curly hair, Cassidy is the cake receiver in Happiest Day, and that Cassidy is a girl. These would all be important things to confirm. Even though Cassidy has been portrayed as a girl in the novel continuity, she hasn't made a confirmed appearance in the games. Some fans believe that the game version of this character is a boy, since Cassidy is a gender-neutral name, which could mean Cassidy is the name of boy characters we've seen before, such as the FNAF 4 Bite Victim or the Vengeful Spirit. But that belief never really made sense to me. For one, Cassidy is more commonly a girl's name. And secondly, to me, it just doesn't make sense that Scott would release a game tie-in book revealing that a character is named Cassidy, and then within the same year, release a novel featuring a girl also named Cassidy, but not have the game character be that girl. So Cassidy is definitely 100% the Golden Freddy child, because the Golden Freddy kid is the final kid in Happiest Day who was given cake. And Return to the Pit says that the final kid is a girl with curly hair, right? Well, I wouldn't say that it's 100% confirmation, because what we see in Return to the Pit isn't exactly the same as Happiest Day. If you read the rest of the book after Oswald beats 8-Bit Escape, you'll find out that Oswald finds himself back in the real world and back in the present, but he's in a changed present. Jeff's Pizza is a thriving business now, and Oswald finds a newspaper about 5 kids being saved from a murderous abductor. That's what I meant when I said that the ball pit does have time-changing properties. Oswald beating 8-Bit Escape did change the timeline, but that's not what the minigames do in FNAF 3. Happiest Day frees the dead spirits. When we successfully give them cake, we still have to beat the FNAF 3 night segments in Fazbear's Fright, which wouldn't exist if the kids weren't killed. The timeline didn't change. Another difference between 8-Bit Escape and Happiest Day is that the kids in 8-Bit Escape haven't been killed yet. They're not ghosts, they're still alive. In 8-Bit Escape, we're rescuing the kids. In Happiest Day, we're giving peace to their spirits. Originally, I was actually going to argue that Susie was this final cake girl in Return to the Pit, since she also has curly hair, but the reasoning seemed arbitrary and honestly overcomplicated things. While 8-Bit Escape might not be Happiest Day exactly as we've seen it before, I think it's fair to treat it as an adaptation of Happiest Day, a recreation of it, a callback to it. To give Scott a bit more credit, I think he knows this community enough to realize that fans were going to see the major similarities between these two scenes and recognize that both put importance on that final 5th kid. I don't think he would write in detail about this final cake girl having curly hair and just coyly intend that it was Susie, when the previous final kid who gets cake that fans are familiar with is the Golden Freddy kid in Happiest Day. This is Scott reinforcing that Cassidy is a girl in the games, and that she's that final kid in Happiest Day. I guess you could argue that Cassidy having curly hair contradicts how she's described in the 4th closet. And that's Cassidy, a girl with long black hair approached. She's not mentioned to have curly hair. However, that does not really confirm anything. This is just the nature of simplifying character descriptions. There are 2 separate descriptions of the character Susie that actually show exactly what I'm talking about. A little girl with long blonde hair ran past him. That's how the 4th closet describes Susie at first. But then, later on, the book says, the little girl with blonde curls. These 2 descriptions create the visual of Susie as we see her in FNAF 6. long, blonde hair with curls. It's a similar thing with Cassidy, except rather than the pieces of her description being in separate pages of the same book, they're in different books entirely. But all those different lines create the full description of this character, a little girl with long, black, curly hair. After all, Return to the Pit isn't even the first book to imply that Cassidy has curly hair. That should actually be credited to the Fazbear Fright story, The New Kid. The book portrays the protagonist, Devin, looking into the Golden Freddy suit in an attempt to find the character Kelsey, but instead finds a dead body with black curly hair. Considering everything I already stated in this video, I think it's safe to say this body is meant to be the original kid who was stuffed inside Golden Freddy in the first place, Cassidy, which actually fits with the meaning of the name Cassidy, which is curly hair. I'm not sure if this was intentional, but it's still a neat detail. With all that considered, I think we can safely say that Return to the Pit confirms that the Happiest Day kid is Cassidy, a little girl who was murdered by William Afton in the missing children's incident that occurred at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza on June 26, 1985, and that the visual parallels between Happiest Day and the Bite of 83 don't exist to imply that it's literally the Bite victim who wears the Golden Freddy mask. Rather, it's to show that the 5 spirits are connected to the Bite victim's memory. But if Cassidy isn't the name of the Bite victim or the vengeful spirit, then why is she so important as Golden Freddy? My answer to that isn't at all in original theory, but I think that Cassidy was killed by being spring-locked in the Golden Freddy suit. Remember that Scott said the Fazbear Frights books were meant to fill in the blanks of the game's story. Based on the rules of possession that the Frights books give us, the amount of energy associated with a ghostly spirit and the object they haunt is based on the amount of agony they experience during their death. The spring-locked suits being used as devices to intentionally kill characters has been a repeated motif throughout this franchise. In The Silver Eyes, William describes the experience of falling victim to a spring lock failure, saying that the spring locks snap right into you, making deep cuts all over your body. Sharp steel and hard plastic instantly being driven into you. You will die, Will says, but it will be slow. You'll feel your organs punctured. The suit will grow wet with your blood, and you will know you're dying for long, long minutes. You'll try to scream, but you will be unable to. Your vocal cords will be severed, and your lungs will fill with your own blood until you drown in it. It is especially disturbing to think that Cassidy, a little girl who was no older than 10 years old, could have been made to suffer like that until she died. If William killed Cassidy by forcing her to be spring-locked in the Golden Freddy suit, then she would have suffered an agonizing death, resulting in her spirit having a higher amount of energy than the other MCI souls, which would theoretically allow her to do things like teleport, create ghostly visions, and invade someone's mind. The New Kid includes a description of the Golden Freddy suit experiencing a spring lock failure, and it is extremely similar to Golden Freddy twitching in the final cutscene of Ultimate Custom Night. The sound wasn't the bad part. It was bad, yes, but the bad part, the really, really bad part, was the way the suit started jerking in a spastic, horrific dance. It looked like the moth-eaten, mildew-blotched gold bear was convulsing. I don't think there needs to be anything ultra special about Cassidy herself. She doesn't need to have any sort of grand backstory prior to being killed. She was just an innocent little girl who unfortunately suffered a horrible death, who, in FNAF 3, was able to force her killer into a near-identical fate. With that, I'm personally content that the books have actually told us what Cassidy looks like, along with probably confirming that she really was the one at the end of the table in Happiest Day. Thank you so much for the massive positive reactions to my Mangle video. It is one of the best performing videos on this channel, and because it performed so well, my channel became eligible for monetization. I can actually make money off of my YouTube videos now, not only through ads, but also through donations, super chats, and memberships. The plan is for my YouTube memberships to be the same as my Patreon. Donating through either platform will give you perks like getting your name at the end of these videos. If you have the means to, and you like the extra stuff that I'm offering, then consider joining the channel. I'll hopefully have a new video up soon. Until then, let me know what you think about my theory. Thanks for watching.